Hey guys, it's Josie with Queen My Pawn. Today I'm going to be going over some king and pawn endings, the very basics. So I'll begin by sharing my screen and going straight into the endgames. Okay, so in this first endgame, we can see that the pawn, we're black, and the pawn is white. The pawn's going from 1 to 8, so it's going downwards, and we have to prevent it from getting all the way down and becoming a queen. So try to pause this video and find the best way to do that. I'll give you just a moment. Okay, so basically, you have got to get in front of the pawn. If you get in front of the pawn, remember that kings cannot come close to each other. When that happens, it's an illegal move, and it's not checkers, it's chess. So the best defense is to get in front of the pawn. That's the best move, is to push the pawn forward. Then you can either get in front of the pawn or in front of the king, such as over here. Normally I would just move to g7, but in case this move happens, which still works, but wouldn't recommend it, I would just simply play king to g7 and king to f5. Now you just get in front of the pawn again. Never get out of the way of the pawn or the king. You've got to stop them both. The idea is that the white king wants to control the path of the pawn, especially the g7 and g8 squares. They can control g8. You're done. Now, you do not, again, get in front of the king. I think that they put the second move over here to try to trick us, but you must always stay in front of the pawn. Now, you cannot get in front of the pawn anymore. So you do the second best thing, is to get in front of the king. And now you can get in front of the pawn, and it's a draw. That's an ad. Okay. So, moving on. Again, you just have to get in front of the pawn. So that's another way to continue, interestingly. But obviously, I don't think it would work if the move that white played was king to e6. But, so both sides made a mistake. Actually, never mind. Yeah, king to this move still works. But you just get in front of the pawn again. See, now they play king to e6, so now you just get in front of the king. Next problem. White to move, and basically, you got to get to a1 as fast as possible. There's nothing left to do but get to a1. Now here's the thing. If the king goes to a2, you'll never get to a1, blocking the pawn. But at the same time, his king is trapped on the a file. And if it is, then he's not able to move his pawn forward because the king's in the way. For example, what's he gonna do? You just basically stay between c1 and c2 all day. And if he tries to get out the way, now you get to go to a1, and now it's stalemate because there's no room. And it would be stalemate anyways. Okay, now here's the trick. It seems simple to push the pawn forward and get a queen, but be careful. When you play chess, the rule is that every time that you move, black has to move, unless he's checkmated. But when you push the pawn to c7, then he has no moves, and he's not in check, so it's stalemate. So the best second thing would be to what? Try to pause the video and find the answer. Okay. The basic defense that we've done when trying to prevent a loss is to get in front of the pawn. To win, you have to prevent them from getting in front of your pawn. And the way to do that is king to c7, king to D8, and now you're controlling C7 and C8, the promotion squares. All right, here's another new concept. See if you can try to find the answer. Okay, this position, unless you know the concept, is tricky. Basically, most people will try to push the pawn forward, but then remember, black king just gets in front of the pawn, and you will not be able to control the promotion squares because the king just stays in front of your pawn. The second best thing would be to try to move the king here, but then this is a new concept. The king, the black king, then gets in front of your king, and when he does that, you're actually stuck. If king to g5, black king to g7, and if you try to sidestep, for example, king to f5, king to f7, he just basically mirrors you all day. And if you try to push your pawn at any point, he just gets in front of the pawn anyways. The only move would be king to f5. Now you get in front of his king. He has to get out the way, and then you just push your king forward, safely getting control of the promotion square. Now be careful, because this could be stalemate white easily. But there's another trick. You have to pass the move. And the way to do that would be to play king to g6. He's got to move his king that way. Then you just go to h6. He has to play king to h8, and now simply pawn to g6. So back to this position. You can't play g6, so you just have to pass the move by basically wasting a tempo. That's always the trick, basically. And if king to f8, then you just obviously secure the promotions. So next problem. Okay. Try to pause the video and figure this one out as well. Okay, so in this video, not in this video, but in this particular problem, there's only one right path, and obviously you cannot move this way or push your pawn. If you push your pawn, the king gets to f5. And if you push your king to e3, the king goes to e5, blocking your king and then getting in front of the pawn anyways. And the only way to secure the path is to play king to g3. Then king to g4. And now you get in front of his king, and it's basically over. And here's another ad. Okay. Now, this is actually from a famous game that Fischer played and ended up drawing. I think it was against Gligoric. And 60s, 1959. So, try to find the best defense for black. All right. Notice that it's very easy to defend pawn endings when you could just see that if you try to make a move, they make their move, and then you end up losing. For example, if you move the king to c7, he moves the king to c5. Then you move the king to b7, he moves his king to b5. You have to move your king to c7 or a7, and then he just moves the king the other way, forward, and promotes the pawn as before. The best defense would be king to b8. Now you get in front of his king. Yep, I knew it, 1959. So if he tries to push his pawn, now you can actually just get in front of the pawn. If he tries to push his king forward, you get in front of the king. Same concept as number 6. You got to secure the promotion. And now king to d4. And again, securing the promotion. That's really, like, pawn endings become simple when you know the patterns. Try to pause the video using the same concepts we just learned and solve it. Okay, well, because of what we just learned, we had to get the king to e6 so that we can get control of f8, since that's where the pawn's gonna end up. He's got 2 moves, so he'll be on f8 when we get to e6, but then we just for king to f6. In that case, you just push the pawn forward and you get control of the promotion path. Passive move, but it still wins. Really, it still wins, so it really doesn't matter which one you pick. Okay, finally, number 10. This looks similar to number 2, but now it's white to move. Try to follow the same steps that I've shown and figure it out. So you basically have to do exactly the same thing as before and make sure that the king doesn't get control of d7 and d8 blocking you. The only way to do that is to get your king to e6. Be careful, he's got the opposition, but you just move your king to e5. Be careful. What happens if king to e6? He moves his king to e8, and it's a draw. So you have to go the other way. King to d5, king to e8, king to c6, king to d8, and you push your pawn. This is also another way to win. And that's really all that it is to defend pawn endings. You basically just have to, you got to keep your king in front of the pawn when defending. And if you're attacking, well, also, if you can't keep your king in front of the pawn, keep your king in front of the king, and you should be able to defend. If you have the advantage, make sure to get your king in front of their king, and then they have to move because that's the rules, and then you just move your king the other way. Be careful. If the kings are in front of each other and it's your move, you're at a disadvantage. That's the opposition. And always control the escape square. That's it.